Good morning, everyone, and happy Tuesday. I hope everyone's having a good morning and they're ready to get to work. Today, what I want you to do is to start the second story of The Boy Who Cried Wolf, and this one's called The Boy Who Cried Wolf, narrated by the sheepish but truthful wolf. What does narrated mean? Anybody know what that word means? Narrated means who's telling the story. So if I were narrating the story, I would be the person telling the story, and you would see the whole story through my eyes. So if I told a story about us going to school, it would look a lot different than if Prince told us a story about him going to school, right? Because he would talk about me and I would talk about him in my story. So what I want you to do is I only want you to read the beginning of the book. So only pages 4 through 7 today. We're only focused on the beginning. This one's kind of long, so that's why we're going to break it up over the next few days so that way we can kind of look a little bit closer at all the details, okay? So what you're going to do is you're going to read the beginning, pages 4 through 7, or you can go and click on the link at the bottom of the page and you can listen to me read the story, okay? So you can read pages 4 through 7, and then I want you to complete the story plot where you are going to tell me what happens in the beginning of the story and how that was different than the story that we read on Monday. Okay, how is that different than the classic story of The Boy Who Cried Wolf? Okay, give me one difference. So you're going to tell me what happened in the beginning of the story and then tell me one difference between the two stories. Okay? Then I want you to do 30 minutes on iReady reading, okay? Make sure you're getting your minutes, and remember we have to get 45 total for the week. So some of you guys are logging in and only doing the one day and only getting like 20 minutes, so try and get your whole 45 minutes, okay? And then tell me one thing that you enjoyed that you did today, okay? So find something fun and maybe color a picture, and you can upload the picture and take a picture of it and send it to me, okay? So just do something that you enjoy today. Have some fun and let me know what you did, okay? All right, so that is it, and now I'm going to read you guys our story. Remember, we're reading The Magic Tree House, Thanksgiving on a Thursday. Now, let's see, Jack and Annie did not do a very good job catching eels and clams, right? They just got soaking wet, and now it's cold, and Priscilla just found them. So let's see what happens next. Chapter 6, Good Work. Good day, Priscilla, said Annie. Good day, said Priscilla. She walked to them. Did thou fill the basket with eels and clams? Not really, said Jack. The eel didn't want to get caught, said Annie, and the clams want to live to be old. We didn't think it was right to take their lives. Priscilla laughed. Her sad eyes sparkled. What strange children, she said. But you both look wet and cold. Would you like to come to my house and warm up by the fire? Yes, said Jack and Annie. They washed off their feet and pulled on their shoes and stockings. Jack picked up his bag. Annie picked up their empty basket. Would thou like to put some of my corn and squash in thy basket? Said Priscilla. Oh, thanks, said Annie, and she took some of the corn and squash from Priscilla's basket. And perhaps thou would like to carry the pumpkin? Priscilla said to Jack. Sure, said Jack. I mean, indeed, he said. He felt relieved. Now they wouldn't have to go back empty-handed. Jack wrapped his arms around the heavy pumpkin, and Annie carried the basket, and they followed Priscilla back to the village. The Pilgrims and Wamapang Indian were gathered in a wide dirt street. Women were baking bread in an outdoor oven. Some boys were setting wooden planks on barrels to make tables. Mary, the little girl, was carrying a bucket of water. Squanto sat with the chief Massatote, Governor Bradford, and Captain Standish. Jack hoped Mary wouldn't ask him about the clams and eels. He hoped Squanto wouldn't ask him about Captain John Smith. He hoped the governor and captain wouldn't ask him about home. Jack hid his face behind the fat pumpkin. Priscilla opened the door to a small house, then she led Jack and Annie into a dark, smoky room. The only light came from one window and a fire. Sit by the hearth, said Priscilla, so your clothes can dry. Where's the hearth? asked Annie, looking around, and Priscilla laughed again, shaking her head. There, where the fire lies, she said. Jack put down the pumpkin in his bag. Annie put down her basket. The hearth was so large Jack could have stood in it. He and Annie got as close as they could to the warm, crackling fire. Several pots hung over the fire. Near the pots, a turkey was roasting on an iron rod. A Thanksgiving turkey, whispered Annie. Cool, said Jack. The very first Thanksgiving turkey, he thought. Would thou please stir the corn pudding While thou art drying? Asked Priscilla. She pointed to one of the pots. Indeed, said Jack. Priscilla took a wooden spoon out of the jug of water near the hearth, and she gave it to Jack. He put it into the thick, bubbling pudding and stirred. So that oven looks a little bit different. That stove looks a little bit different than what you guys have at home, right? I must gather nuts, said Priscilla. While I'm gone, please move the roots close to the ashes and stir herbs into the seafood chowder. Indeed, said Annie. After Priscilla left, Annie looked at Jack. What are roots and herbs? She asked. Look in the book, said Jack. Annie took the research book from Jack's bag, and she looked up roots and read aloud. The Pilgrims called certain vegetables roots. These vegetables, such as carrots and turnips, grow under the ground. Ah, said Jack, and he picked up some carrots and turnips near the hearth and moved them closer to the hot ashes. Next, Annie looked up herbs, and she read aloud. The Pilgrims called leafy vegetables that grow above the ground herbs. They made salad with their herbs. They used the dried herbs to flavor soups and seafood chowders. Jack saw some dried plants hanging in the rafters. Those must be the herbs, he said. Annie broke off a leaf and sniffed it. That smells good. She leaned close to one of the pots. And that must be the seafood chowder. It smells like the ocean. She crumpled the leaf into the chowder and took another spoon from the jug of water, and she and Jack both stirred pots. Good work, Priscilla said when she stepped back in the room. Jack smiled. The fire had made him hot and sweaty, and the smoke burned his eyes, but he didn't mind. Finally, he felt useful. Priscilla put some walnuts close to the fire. Squanto taught us which nuts are good to eat, she said. Squanto taught thee a lot, said Annie. He saved our lives, Priscilla said quietly. Last winter we were cold and hungry, and half our people died. Annie gasped. How? She said. Sickness, said Priscilla. Fever took my mother, my father, and my brother. Her eyes were bright with tears. No one spoke, and the sound of crackling fire filled the room. Then Annie put her arm around Priscilla. We're so sorry. Yes, we are, said Jack. Thank you, Priscilla said with a sad smile. 'Twas a terrible winter, but we never gave up hope, and now, God be praised, we have a good harvest and we have peace with our neighbors. In the glowing of the firelight, Priscilla was beautiful, thought Jack. Not only was she kind, but she was also incredibly brave. Come, she said. She wiped her eye and stood up. Something special is about to take place. Would thou like to watch? Sure, said Annie. Indeed, she said. She and Jack jumped up and followed Priscilla outside. And that is where we're going to stop. So I'm excited to see what something special is. All right, now I'm switching over to Charlotte's Web. Now remember, they're all at the fair, right? So let's see what's going on. In the cool of the evening, when the shadows darkened the fairgrounds, Templeton crept out from the crate and looked around. Wilbur lay asleep in the straw, Charlotte was building a web, and Templeton's keen nose detected many fine smells in the air. The rat was hungry and thirsty. He decided to go exploring. Without saying anything to anybody, he started off. Bring me back a word, Charlotte called after him. I shall be writing tonight for the last time. The rat mumbled something to himself and disappeared into the shadows. He did not like being treated like a messenger boy. After the heat of the day, the evening came as a welcoming relief to all. The Ferris wheel was lighted now. It went around and around in the sky and seemed twice as high as it did by day. There were lights in the midway, and you could hear the crackle of the gambling machines and the music of the merry-go-round and the voice of the man in the booth calling numbers. The children felt refreshed after their nap. Fern met her friend Henry Fussy, and he invited her to ride with him in the Ferris wheel. He even bought a ticket for her, so it didn't even cost her anything. When Mrs. Arble happened to look up into the starry sky and saw her little daughter sitting with Henry Fussy and going higher and higher in the air, she saw how happy Fern looked. She just shook her head. My, she said, Henry Fussy, think of that. Templeton kept out of sight. In the tall grass behind the cattle barn, he found a folded newspaper. Inside it were leftovers from somebody's lunch, a deviled ham sandwich, a piece of Swiss cheese, part of a hard-boiled egg, and the core of a wormy apple. The rat crawled in and ate everything. Then he tore a word out of the paper, rolled it up, and started back to Wilbur's pen. Charlotte had her web almost finished when Templeton returned, carrying the newspaper clipping. She had left a space in the middle of the web At this hour, no people were around the pig pen, so the rat and the spider and the pig were by themselves. "I hope you brought a good one," Charlotte said. "It is the last word I shall ever write." "Here," said Templeton, unrolling the paper. "What does it say?" asked Charlotte. "You have to read it to me." "It says humble," replied the rat. "Humble," said Charlotte. "Humble has two meanings. It means not proud, and it means near the ground." "That's Wilbur all over. He's not proud, and he's near the ground." "Well, I hope you're satisfied," sneered the rat. "I'm not going to spend all my time fetching and carrying. I came to this fair to enjoy myself, not to deliver papers." "You've been very helpful," Charlotte said. "Run along if you want to see more of the fair." The rat grinned. "I'm going to make a night of it," he said. "The old sheep was right. This fair is a rat's paradise. What eating, what drinking, and everywhere has a good hiding and good hunting. Bye-bye, my humble Wilbur. Fare thee well, Charlotte, you old schemer. This will be a night to remember in a rat's life." And he vanished back into the shadows. Charlotte went back to her work. It was quite dark now. In the distance, fireworks began going off, rockets scattering fiery balls in the sky. By the time the Arbolls and the Zuckermans and Lurvy returned from the grandstand, Charlotte had finished her web. The word humble was woven neatly in the center. Nobody noticed it in the darkness. Everyone was tired and happy. Fern and Avery climbed into the truck and laid down. They pulled the Indian blanket over them. Lurvy gave Wilbur a forkful of fresh straw. Mr. Arbull patted him. "Time for us to go home," he said. "See you tomorrow." The grown-ups climbed slowly into the truck, and Wilbur heard the engine start, and then heard the truck moving away in a low speed. He would have felt lonely and homesick had Charlotte not been with him. He'd never feel lonely when she was near. In the distance, he could still hear the music of the merry-go-round. As he was dropping off to sleep, he spoke to Charlotte. "Sing me that song again, about the dung in the dark," he begged. "Not tonight," she said in a low voice. "I'm too tired." Her voice didn't seem to come from her web. "Where are you? I can't see you. Are you in your web?" "I'm back here," she answered, "up in this back corner." "Why aren't you on your web?" asked Wilbur. "You almost never leave your web." "I've left it tonight," she said. Wilbur closed his eyes. "Charlotte," he said, after a while, "do you think Miss Zuckerman will let me live and not kill me when the cold weather comes? Do you really think so?" "Of course," said Charlotte. "You're a famous pig, and you're a good pig. Tomorrow you'll probably win a prize. The whole world will hear about you. Zuckerman will be proud and happy to own such a pig. You have nothing to fear, Wilbur. Nothing to worry about. Maybe you'll live forever. Who knows? And now go to sleep." For a while there was no sound, and then Wilbur's voice. "What are you doing up there, Charlotte?" "Oh, making something," she said. "Making something as usual." "Is it something for me?" asked Wilbur. "No," said Charlotte. "It's something for me, for a change." "Please tell me what it is," begged Wilbur. "I'll tell you in the morning," she said. "When the first light comes in the sky, and the sparrows stir, and the cows rattle their chains, when the rooster crows, and the stars fade, when the early cars whisper along the highway, you look up here and I'll show you something. I will show you my masterpiece." Before she finished the sentence, Wilbur was asleep. She could tell by the sound of his breathing that he was sleeping peacefully. Deep in the straw, miles away at the Arbolls' house, the men sat around the kitchen table, eating a dish of canned peaches and talking over the events of the day. Upstairs, Avery was already in bed and asleep. Mrs. Arbull was tucking Fern into bed. "Did you have a good time at the fair?" she asked as she kissed her daughter. Fern nodded. "I had the best time I've ever had anywhere or any time in my whole life." "Well," said Mrs. Arbull, "isn't that nice?" That is the end of the chapter. So that is where we are going to stop. We only have a little bit of Charlotte's Web left. Look. Oh my goodness. All right, so I think we'll probably finish that by next week, and then we can all be reading the Magic Tree House together. All right, so we are going to stop there today. Remember, you have some work to do. Go read 4 through 7 in the book The Boy Who Cried Wolf, narrated by the sheepish and truthful wolf. And then remember to complete your 2 assignments and get some iReady minutes, okay? I hope everyone has a great Tuesday, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.